My wife suggested we add a shoe rack, and she wanted it floating instead of on the floor so that you could get underneath to clean. Welcome to another episode. So as you can see, this shoe rack is floating up off the floor. What I'm going to be doing in this episode is showing you the process I went through to design this shoe rack. I'm using Fusion 360 for the design as well as to create the toolpaths for my CNC router. So let's head to the computer and we'll start working on the design of the shoe rack. What you're seeing here is the design that I actually used, but what I'm going to do is walk you through how I would have designed it rather than how I actually designed it, because the way I actually designed it is kind of working my way through things and figuring out how I want to do things, and that's not necessarily the most efficient way to design it. So I'll give you an idea of a few of the characteristics of this. So one thing is that if I isolate this part here, and actually I'm going to isolate this one, which is this part here, you can see that there are various slots in here for the other pieces to fit into. So if I unisolate, you can see that we've got this part here fits into a slot, this fits into another slot, this fits into a slot, and then there's another board back here which also fits into a slot. And then these have dog bones as well that I'll go into as we start building it. So there's a lot going on here, and this is also driven by some parameters, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do is start from the beginning with a new file and then walk you through how I would create this with what I know now. The floating shelf is held to the wall with a French cleat. So I'm going to start by modeling the French cleat, and then I'll model everything else relative to the French cleat. So I created a sketch and I just chose one plane. It doesn't really matter which plane you start with. The other thing I want to do is, before I start drawing anything, change this to inches. And a French cleat is basically shaped like this. And what I did here is, so that this will align here, is I hover over it and then move over here, and this will make it vertical. And then I can complete the sketch right there. I want to make sure that this is 45 degrees, so I will set that angle right now. And then I want to set some dimensions. Now for the dimensions, I want to start by using a parameter. So I'll create a parameter, a user parameter called thickness. And I measure the thickness of my plywood, which is 0.7 inches. So I'll use that right there. And that means I can set this dimension here to be that value, like so. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to add a point here at the midpoint. You can see the triangle there. That indicates it's at the midpoint. Doing that will allow me to set this dimension to be 3 inches. Why 3 inches? I just thought that would be a good length for the midpoint of the French cleat. So that's why I set it there. So now I have the profile for a French cleat. Oh, there is one thing I just remembered, so I'm going to go back to that sketch. And actually there's something I often forget to do, which is I want to make this a component first. So I rolled the history back. And now I'm going to say, give it a name for this component. I'll call it the French cleat. And now I want to move this sketch to be part of the French cleat. So I'm going to edit this sketch again. One of the things I want to do is I do not want to have a point there because points are fragile. So I actually want to have this be about 1/8 of an inch short. And this is something that I did using my friend's table saw. Basically, after cutting the French cleat on his table saw, then we went back and cut this off so that it's not a sharp corner, which means it's not going to be fragile the way a sharp corner would be. The next thing I'm going to want to do is extrude this, but before I extrude it, I'm going to create another parameter, which is the width of the entire shelf. So I'm going to call this the shelf width, and I'm going to make that 48 inches, which is 4 feet. The next thing I'm going to do, because it's really nice to use parameters, is say cleat width. And I'm going to make that the shelf width. Oops. Let me try that again. The shelf width. And then from that I want to subtract 2 times the thickness because I keep pressing tab, but I want to press enter. And what this will do is this will make the, because I'm going to use the same plywood for the 2 outside parts of the shelf, it means this would make the French cleat exactly the right length for the inside of the shelf. That's a little bit too tight, so I'm going to make it so that we have 2 inches, and what that will allow me to do is to actually move the shelf left and right a little bit in case I want to. So that gives me a little bit of an extra buffer. So that means I can now go back and I can say extrude, and I'm used to just pressing E for extrude. Then I'm going to select this profile, not including the sharp part. I want to change this to symmetric, and then I want to change this to whole width. And then for the distance, this is going to be the cleat width. And of course, new body. So now, when we look at this, here we have the French cleat. The wall is going to be behind here. Before I get any further, I should save this. So I'm going to go and say save, and I'll call this floating shoe rack. Next, I'm going to create the French cleat that is going to be part of the shoe rack. So I'll call that the shelf cleat. And so I'll create a new sketch, use the same sketch plane. The other cleat is not a mirror image of this. It's actually this shape here, rotated by 180 degrees around this center point here. To achieve that, I'm going to start by projecting. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show the sketch from here. And then what I'm going to want to do is project some of these things. So I'll change the line to make sure the line type is on construction. And then I type P for project. I'm going to project this point. And then I also want to project all of this right here. Then I'm going to create a pattern. So I'll do a circular pattern. And the object is going to be this. I double-clicked on it. The center point is going to be here. I want 2 of these, and then I don't want that to be construction. So when I click on that, it should turn solid. It did not, but that's okay. I can double-click on that and then click here and make them so it's not construction. So now I have the actual cleat for the back of the floating shelf. This needs to be wider, and I need an equation for that before I extrude it. I'm going to open the parameters again. The first parameter I want to create is something I'll call dado depth. The idea of this is I'm going to have slots, dados, rabbits, various other things that some of the boards slot into so that everything fits together really nicely. I'm going to make that depth 1/4 of an inch, which is approximately 1/3 of the thickness of the material. And then the length of this shelf cleat is going to be the full length, and then I'm going to subtract the width of the 2 pieces of plywood, but not the total width of those 2 pieces of plywood because I have to remove the dado depth. So I'll define this new one to be the inner length, and it's going to be the shelf width minus 2 times the thickness of the material. I keep pressing tab. And then from that I want to subtract the dado depth. And I keep pressing tab because when I'm writing computer software, tab is auto-completion. Alright, so this is going to be the value that we want for the length of this new cleat. So I can then go here and say extrude. Select this. Again, I'm going to change it to be symmetric. Whole length. And then this is going to be the inner width, or inner length. And now, if I turn off the sketch, we can close this. You can see I have these 2 separate boards. And what I just realized is, again, I forgot to make a component. So I'm going to back up, and with any luck, I will be able to create this as a separate component. So shelf, cleat, and then I want to move forward one, take this new sketch, which is right there, and move it to here. Okay, it's not going to let me do that, so that means what I have to do, I'm not sure why I have to do this, but if I delete this, and then I should be able to move that sketch now, which I can. So now this is active, and I will make sure that this sketch is visible. I will extrude again. And now all is good. Now this, by the way, is one advantage that I find to having the display color component cycles turned on. I can easily tell when I have not created something as a separate component when I should have. All right, so this is a good starting point. You can see there is room to move left and right. At this point, what I want to do is start creating the sketch for the end component, for the side, effectively. There are going to be some other boards that come in between, but what I want to do is take the approach of a master sketch. I want that master sketch to be in the right position, so I'll start out by creating the component. Actually, now that I think about it, I'll keep this master sketch up here at the top. So I have this already selected as the active component, and what I'll do is I'll create an offset plane. I want to create that offset plane from here, and then it's going to be the shelf width divided by 2. And that went in the opposite direction that I want, so I'll just change this to a minus, and now it's over there. Then I'll create the sketch on here. I'll start with the diagonal board on which the shoes will sit, and then the piece in the front. So I'll go ahead and start creating some lines. Actually, I'll create a rectangle, and I'll use a 3-point rectangle. So I'll just get something kind of sketched in here, and then I'll start to add dimensions. So the first dimension I want is here. I want this to be the thickness of the material. What I'm going to do is actually, now that I think about it, what I want to do here is have another line that goes from there. Actually, I'm not sure why it just snapped. I'm going to undo. Okay, try a line again, and I want this line to go from here to here. And now that I think about it, I don't want to add the line next. You can see I'm kind of thinking things through. I'm giving you a little bit of an impression of what it's like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to set this to 30 degrees. And so I'm going to just sketch in a line that I can use as a horizontal line. And then I can go in here and say dimension. Let's see, where's dimension? I always press D. So I'm actually not sure where dimension is. So I'll just go ahead and type D again. And then I'm going to make this 30 degrees here. Now that I've done that, I can go and add this vertical line here. And I don't want that to be a construction line, I want that to be an actual line. And then I want to start projecting a few things that I'm going to use. So I'll project this line here, because what I want to do is have, I'm going to move this over a little bit. So I want this point here to be coincident, like so. And then I'm going to move this over again, because what I want is this point here to be in line with this point here. Because we're not going to keep this on the material, I'm going to cut that off. And so that means the board is going to go like so. Then I decided, after measuring some shoes, in particular my son's shoes, I'll press D and set this dimension to 14 inches, which is long enough for his shoes. He's 25 years old now, and he's quite tall, 6'2", so he has pretty long shoes. All right, so that's the board here, except I just realized I didn't set this to the thickness. Okay, that looks better now. Then I want the board here, and when I create that board, again, I'll create a rectangle with 3 points. So I want 3 points, like so. Then I can add some more dimensions. So D is going to be the thickness again. So you can see this is going to be the front lip, but I have these overlapping here because I'm going to want to have a rabbit in here for alignment. And so this distance from here to here, I'm going to use the dado depth. So I'm using the same depth for everything. And then for this distance here, I'll just go ahead and make it 1.5 inches, which I think is going to look good, and it'll keep the shoes from falling off. Next, I'm going to start sketching out the side panel itself. As I said, these are the two shelf boards. And so I'll go back to line, and I'm going to want to have it basically go up to here. I'll worry about setting everything up later. And then I'm going to want to have it go down to here. So I'll make sure that that all works well, like so. And I said I'm going to do this approximately, so now what I want to do is have these two be collinear. So that's my basic shape. But I don't like this straight edge. It looks a little bit boxy. So what I decided to do is to add just a curve. So I'll do a 3-point arc. And I'm going to connect this in a minute. So I'm just going to kind of sketch it in here. And then what I want to do is to have another 3-point arc, which is going to go from there to there. And that makes a tangent. Yep. And then I want another one to go from here to there and also be tangent. You notice these two parts are not tangent, so I'll go ahead and make those tangent. It's a little kinked at the moment. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, so sometimes weird things happen like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some constraints. So I'm going to dimension this to be about 12 inches, I think I'll call it. And again, weird things happened. So I'm going to delete these and try to add them back in a way that works better. So I'll go to the arc again, but this time I'm going to say tangent arc. So it'll be tangent to that. And then I can add that tangency. I can get close and then add that tangency later. Likewise, I'll make a tangent to that. And then this is pretty close. Okay, so now I should be able to make these two tangent. Yep. And make these two tangent. And that's good. I do want to bring this in a little bit. So this is moving things around a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to add a couple other dimensions. These are dimensions that I figured out after some trial and error. So I made this 0.43 inches. And then I also made this distance here the same thing. So I'll just control click on this, and that copied it to there. So now these two are the same. Then I need to set a radius for these two. So I'll set the radius of this to be 2 inches. And then this one I'll set to be 2.5 inches. It turned out that for whatever reason it looked a little better when it was 2.5 inches. So that's pretty much it for the side panels. And we can go ahead and extrude it. That's not going to be the full story, but at least let's do that and get a start. So I'll create a new component. And I'll just call this side. And then I can extrude. I'm going to have to select a bunch of things. But this is what I want. And then, now, for some reason it's not rotating. Okay, there we go. And what I want to do is make this thickness. Now, if I go here, you'll see that one of the issues is that we don't have the dados in here, and that's okay. What I want to do is finish drawing the other pieces, and then we'll go ahead and add the dados and slots. On second thought, I think I'm going to go ahead and try to just go ahead and add those slots now. Because we know where they are, because we've got the other pieces, And then once we do that, I'm going to use a different technique, I think, to create the boards. So let's go and make the side the active piece. And then I'll sketch on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this sketch again. And then I'm going to project. Now, you'll see in a minute why I'm doing this. What I want to make is these constructions, so I'll double click on that. So this is where we need one dado. This is going to be a whole thing here, so I'll click on this. And then I'm going to click on these, and then I'm going to need to connect a few things together. And I'll click on this side. Likewise, I'll do these segments here. Actually, let me, yep. Okay, so I'll hide that sketch, and actually I'll isolate this so we can just see this. And it's a little hard to see the sketches because of the colors. The reason I created these sketches is because I want these slots to be a little bit wider than the actual material width, because otherwise I find that they're too tight. So I'm going to offset, and what I want to do is first create a parameter that I will call dado delta. And I'm going to make it 0.1 inches or 0.1 inches, which is pretty small. Okay, so now what I can do is I can go to, for example, here. I double clicked and I thought it would select it, but it doesn't know the connection anymore. So I'll just go ahead and select these four, and then I'll say offset, and I want this to be dado delta. And I want to zoom in to make sure it went the right direction. It went outside. This is showing as construction, but I don't want it to be construction. I'm not sure why it's showing up. So I'm going to undo that and then try this again. So I'll say offset. Select the different ones. Okay, so now that will make the slot a little bit wider. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the other ones. So I'll say offset, and then I want to do these as well. Now that offset went the other way, so I'll flip it, and now I can type. So actually that tells me that I have to do minus dado delta. Zoom in, make sure it's okay. Yes, it's outside in both directions, so that one's good. And then we want to do the same thing here. So I'll go ahead and say offset. I'll select these. And I'm going to have to connect more later anyway, so I'm not going to do all of the ones that I need. For some reason, I'm not able to select that. So let me try this again. Okay. And it's not allowing me to multi-select. That's okay. Just make sure it's outside. Here's the there are the dashed lines. Yes, it's outside. And then I'll offset this top one as well. Okay, now it's not complete, so I'll go ahead, I pressed L, and I'll connect the lines, and then connect this 2 lines there. And that is giving me what I need. Now just remember there's something else that I'm going to want. So I have, let me show these, unisolate this. So what I have right now is these 2 pieces here, and I thought it would be stronger if I had another piece basically that this was attached to and this is also attached to. And then this piece would also be resting on this. What I'll do therefore is I'll go back in time in history. I have to go there to my master sketch. So I'll edit this sketch. And as I said, I want another board here. And the other board is going to, I'll just go ahead and say rectangle. So it's going to go from here down to not quite all the way. So I need to project again, so P, and I want to make this construction. I need to pick this up. What that will allow me to do is to make this collinear, like so. Then I also want to have this constrained to this here. Didn't allow me to do that. Okay, it was already constrained. So I'll set the thickness of this to be the thickness of the plywood. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit shorter because it doesn't have to be the full length, so I'll make it a 1/4 inch shorter as shown. So now I can go back to where I was defining these slots or dados or whatever you're going to call them, and I need to add one more. So I'll go ahead into that sketch, and then that means I need to show this sketch again. So now I can project, making sure the line type is construction, and I'll double click on this, so that's going to pick up that as well. And so that means I can also add that as an offset. Make sure I uncheck this. So grab those 3, and then minus the delta. And again, making sure that it's here, the dashed line, so yes, it's outside. So at this point, you can see that I have all of the sketches that I need to be able to create the dados or the slots or whatever you want to call them. So now I'm going to go back to the side. I'm going to isolate it so I don't see all of the other things. And now I'll say extrude and select all of these areas. Oops. Okay, what I discovered is I'm missing a line. So I have to go back here, edit the sketch. And so I seem to be, I have to zoom in. So somewhere along the way, this area here is not considered to be filled. So what I'm going to do is delete this line, and then make sure that when I do create the line, it's actually going from here, rather than the dotted section, all the way down to the solid line here. And now you can see it changed color, so that means we can extrude. So I'll go back to here and try extruding again. And so now I should be able to select all of these, which I can. And then the distance will be dado depth. And as you can see, it went the wrong way. I didn't check that carefully. So I want to go minus, and I want that to be cut. And there we go. If we unisolate, you can see that we have actually, I have cut more than we need to cut because this does not go all the way across. Let me check my sketch. You can see my sketch doesn't have that ending point. So I'll go ahead and edit the sketch. And then what I need to do is I need to project this right here. So I'll say P, and then I'll project this line here. And actually what I'll do is I'll project this line. And then I need to add to that line to extend it the rest of the way like so. And I think at this point it means I can update this to exclude that section. And now you can see that is pretty much what I want. There are these extra pieces up here that I could probably get rid of if I wanted to, but I'll keep them there for now. Well, actually there are some extra things. Let me back up to try to get an idea. Oh, there's probably something that I didn't capture. Yep, there's another segment that I need to add. Okay, that looks better. So I didn't need that extra bump. I didn't want the extra bump because that would interfere with this board here. Okay, so now let me go ahead and start adding the other boards. When I create the other boards, it would be nice to be able to extrude them from this surface to the other side. So what I'll do is I'll start by mirroring the side that I have. So I'll select mirror, and I want to select a component, which is this one here. And then I want to mirror it around this plane here, like so. And you see that will create our mirrored side. If we select the top, you can see we have those two mirrored sides. So I'll create a new component for the top. And then what I will do is I will enable this sketch again, and what I'm going to say is extrude. The start plane is going to be this object right here, which is that surface. And then the profile is going to be this profile right here. And then the destination is going to be this slot right here. And you can see that created my top board, which is pretty nice. Using a master sketch like that makes this a lot easier. Now I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the front. Oops. I didn't need to activate it, but that doesn't hurt. So I'll call this component front. And then I'll extrude again. For the profile, I'll select right there. And then instead of the profile plane, I'll select object. So that is right there. And then the destination is right there. And now I have my front board. Oops, I just realized I want to change the selection. I do not want to include that, because this is the rabbit that I'm going to put in there for joining those two boards together. Okay, next I'll create the board that is going to go in here that I'll call backboard. Extrude. I'll select the profile, which is this one right here. From there. Yep, that's correct. To there. And you can see it goes in not all the way. Okay, so we're nearly done. There's one more thing that I want to do, which is I want to add a center support. Because this is nearly 4 feet across, I'm not convinced this is going to be strong enough. I mean, for shoes, it's probably just fine. But I decided to add a center support anyway, which of course is going to make the design a little bit more involved. And there are some other things we'll have to deal with, but I'll show you that in a second. Oh, and it's been a little while since I saved this, so I'll go ahead and press save. I was just looking at this and happened to notice this gap here. And that's when I realized that when I made this board, the top board, I didn't include the extension to go into the rabbit of this part here. That's easy to fix. I can click on this, see it's this object here, and then click Edit, and then include the part that I was missing before. And now that's all the correct dimension. So it's good to check what you've done to make sure that everything looks okay. And probably check it multiple times at least before sending it to the CNC machine for cutting. Now before we get to the center support, there's something else. I decided that I would hold these together with screws while the glue is drying. And to make that easier, I decided to drill holes, or pre-drill holes, all the way through with a 1/8-inch diameter drill. And then I would chase them with a countersink, which you'll see when I have the second video where I do the manufacturing. So let me go ahead and back up in history to just this side here, and then I'm going to isolate that, and then we can put in the holes. So the way that I did this, I will show you right now. I guess I forgot to start a sketch. So I'll do a sketch on this plane, and then I'm going to project this line here, as well as this line, that line, at least to get started. I'm not going to show you all of the holes because that's a lot of holes. Then what I want to do is have a construction line that I draw from here to there. And you can see there's a little 90-degree symbol there. So that means this construction line is now right through the center of that slot. And so then I can add some circles, and turn off the construction. I'll add some circles that are a lot bigger than I need, like so. And this one is right in the center. Once I've done that, then I'll go ahead and set the dimensions. Well, actually, before I do that, what I want to do is make them all equal. So I'll use equal and make this equal to that, this one equal to that, and then I can set them to be the size that I want, which in this case is 1/8 of an inch. And those are the holes. Again, I'm not going to do all of them right now. And then I'll just say extrude, so E, and then click on each of these, and then say to object, like so. And now I can have the CNC machine drill these all the way through, and that will turn out really nicely, so that when I come back in and drill through from the other side with the countersink, it'll drill through these holes and into the mating piece of plywood. So that'll be a great starter and help keep things from splitting. So I will move forward, and the thing you'll notice is because I rolled back in history, those details are now in the mirrored image as well. There's one other thing I need to do to be able to make this on my CNC router. If you look right here, we've got a situation where there's this part here that has square corners that needs to go into that slot. Let me go ahead and isolate it. And we can't do that with a CNC router because there's no such thing as an end mill that can cut a square corner. So I have this program that I learned about called Nifty Dogbone, and it allows me to go in here and select the corners. And for some reason I can't do that all the time. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Yeah, I'm going to close this and then open it again because I had that problem before. So let me modify it with Nifty Dogbone. Select this over here. You can see I need to buy the license. I've been using the trial version. I used it for this project and liked it quite a bit, so I definitely want to buy a copy. So you can see when I clicked on those two edges, I had it set that so that it would, you have different options. I set it to this, no, not that one, along the long side. Not because I needed to in this case, but just because I had to choose one option, and that seems fine. You're not going to see this at all from the bottom or the sides or anywhere else because this is going to be underneath. But once I've done that, and if we unisolate this and then move forward, you can see how this will provide a place for that board to slip in, and we won't have any problems with not having square edges. So I mentioned that I also have a center brace. Let me go ahead and show you that. If we look at the full version that I did, you'll notice first of all I have more holes in here, but then I also have this center brace here. Again, I'm not sure I really need it. If I hide that, you can see that there are also dados or slots in these two parts here, and I have dog bones in this one as well. So this is what I actually sent to the CNC machine, and this is what I'm going to be showing in the next episode. I won't continue drawing this because I think you get the idea, and this is already a fairly long video. I hope you found this episode to be useful. In the next episode, I'm going to build and install this shoe rack. Please help me grow the channel by subscribing, give me a thumbs up, commenting below. If you're already a subscriber, you can be notified when I have a new subscription by clicking the bell icon next to the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.